Well, this is Dr. E from La Cañada High School. We just finished the unit on the geosphere and the hydrosphere. Let's start the biosphere. This is section 1.1 on what are ecosystems. The learning objective here is to explain how availability of resources influence how species interact. We'll be able to describe environmental concepts and processes. So, ecosystem basics. An individual would be such thing as an elk. It's an individual organism. That's an elk. A population is a group of the same kind, like an elk herd. A community that would be all of those organisms living in that area, everything from the elk to the moose to the trees to the grass to the bunny rabbits. An ecosystem would be all living and non-living things in the area. The plants, the animals, rocks, soil, and water, and how they interact. A biome is the large area with similar climate conditions that determine plant and animal species. For example, and they're usually named after the plants in that area. For example, the area, rainforest, the plants. So how do organisms interact? They can compete, which means that organisms fight over a resource like a food or shelter. This limits population size. It is negative for both species 1 and species 2 because they don't have the optimal or most resources that they can have. Predation is where one organism uses another for energy source, such as hunter-gatherers, parasites, even herbivores, where one benefits, the predator, and the prey doesn't benefit. Mutualism is the relationship that benefits both organisms, such as a coral reef, where you've got the coral polyps, and you've got the algae, where both of them benefit. Commensalism is a relationship that benefits one organism, but the other one really doesn't care, like a bird's nest in a tree. The tree really doesn't care, but it really helps the bird. Predation. Predation starts with herbivores. They're plant eaters. They eat plants for energies, for example, a giraffe and a tree. Predators, like carnivores, kill and eat prey for energy, such as a leopard and giraffe, and they have different characteristics. If you notice here, the eyes on the predator is in the front. On the prey, it's on the side, so they can see in front and in back of them, each other. Parasites use a host for energy, often without killing the host. Typically without killing the host, because that way they live longer. For example, mosquitoes, tapeworms, sea lamprey, they don't want to kill the host because then they are going to die also. Again, these guys are not going to kill the host. Parasitoids, on the other hand, are like where wasps lay eggs inside or on a host. The legs hatch, and then the larvae eat the host for energy. For example, the parasite wasp or the botfly. Symbiosis is the most misused term because symbiosis means together living conditions. All that means is symbiosis. It's everything from mutualism to parasitism. It's any close or long-term interaction between two organisms of different species. Mutualism is positive, commensalism is positive, who cares? Parasitism is plus, minus. They're all symbiotic relationships. Mutualism is where different organisms live close together in a way that benefits both, like coral, where CO2 is obtained by the algae, gives it food. The algae provides sugars for the coral polyps that supply the home. And the coral polyps use the energy from the algae. You can see here where the polyps are basically related to sea anemones and jellyfish, but they put down calcium carbonate. They connect to each other, forming the coral. And then the algae fit into the surface, and they form a symbiotic mutualistic relationship where the algae supplies the food, coral supplied the home. Lichen is another example of that, where they're fungi, the green fungi, And the fungi and the algae is the red, where the fungi supply the home, algae supply the food. Competition reduces population size since there are fewer resources available and fewer organisms can survive, so they have to make the best. One way is resource partitioning, where different species using the same resource, for example, this tree, use different parts of it, use it in different ways. For example, this one uses the top, this in the middle, the very top, this way and this way. That's resource. It reduces competition for the same source. Another way is by temporal, in other words, different times. They use a resource at different times, such as wolves who hunt at night, coyotes who hunt during the day. There can be spatial partitioning. For example, the black grama uses only surface, whereas the tar bush has deep roots. So they use the same area, but they use different parts of it. Morphological partitioning, where organisms use different resources based on different evolved features. So the ermine will have just surface, where this will be able to get down deep into the organism. So practice FRQ 1.1. Can you identify two organisms that compete for a shared food resource? And 2, can you describe how resource partitioning could reduce the competition between two of the organisms that you identified? Thank you, and I hope that has been helpful.